Good evening. I'm so pleased to introduce you to my guest this evening, Ronald Dodzro, who is a clinical psychologist and he's also training for his PhD. I myself am lifestyle and fitness coach Katie-Marie, and I also do independent curating. And between myself and Ronald this evening, we are raising awareness for PTSD, and we are very much encouraging people to find someone to talk to and create a support network for yourself. Now, I don't want to give Ronald too big an introduction because actually we're going to be talking about where it all began for him, and I'd actually rather it came from him. So without further ado, a warm welcome to you, Ronald. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Should I call you Ron or Ronald?
Yeah, call me Ron. Ron
All
feels
right,
too
Ron
formal.
this evening, and it's Katie
Yeah.
as well. So, all right. So let me. I'm going to bring up my questions, and I am going to get started. So the beginning. I wonder if you could take us back to the beginning. Where did your interest in psychology begin, and how did you direct yourself along the road to your profession now and embarking on your PhD? Love to know a bit more.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like a very long time since I've been within the profession. My interest in clinical psychology started off during my A levels actually, where I had a fantastic teacher, Mr. Angel. He
Mr.
motivated me.
Angel.
Yeah, that was his name. Yeah, I felt like it was actually quite fitting. And he kind of motivated me to get into the profession with his wits, his great teaching. And then from that, I kind of thought to myself, I really wanted to pursue an undergraduate course in psychology. So I did. And that was kind of a 4-year course where I guess it introduced me to the fundamentals of psychology, but at a really broad level. And then naively, when I'd finished, I thought, all right, I've done it. I'm now going to become a psychologist.
Amazing.
And I think that was kind of, but I guess that was kind of a big mistake because actually it takes a lot more to kind of get to the stage where I'm at now. So after that, I kind of did a master's, did some kind of postgraduate qualifications, entered the world of IAPS, which I'll kind of talk a bit about later on as well. But for those that don't know, IAPS stands for Improving Access to Psychological Therapies. And each borough will have one of those services, and they're usually the first kind of contact for anyone wanting to deal with a mental health issue. So I was within an IAPS service for a very long period of time, where I eventually became a CBT therapist. And then after that, I was really fortunate enough to kind of end up in my current role as a clinical psychologist in training on a doctorate in clinical psychology.
This is amazing.
So I've kind of said it quite quickly, but that's probably spanned over about 10 years actually, really. Yeah. Yes, I started, so my undergrad would have been in 2010.
2010, wow, yeah.
It's been a while, yeah.
No, I'm not as long as me, I'm a bit ahead of you. But anyway, never mind. But no, that's fascinating as well, because we do kind of feel once we do that first degree, we get our first kind of taste of things, we're like, right, let's go.
Yeah. I soon had to find out the hard way that no, you're not there yet, mate.
Oh yeah, same. Absolutely the same. So, but you know what, the fact that you've stuck the course and over that 10 years, you put all that time, that energy, that work, that passion in, it's such a catalogue of experience now when you sit back and
yeah. And I think that's kind of what I really enjoy, the fact that I've been able to, within that time frame, have a lot of different experiences, which have shaped who I am and have shaped the type of psychologist that I want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh wow, that's fascinating. And then obviously, embarking on a PhD is massive. I mean, that is a total commitment. So total respect over here.
Thank you.
So, well, very nicely, you mentioned CBT therapy. Now, I'd love to know more about CBT therapy because it's one of the top recommendations for rehabilitation with PTSD. It's one of those therapies that, it's really talked about in the, within PTSD rehabilitation. So I myself have chosen talk therapy. So if anyone's not familiar with what I mean there, so it is literally I go and see my therapist and I speak. Most of the time it's me talking. Ever so often she'll interject with a little, direction, or maybe we can think about it like this, or no, I care. But essentially, a lot of it's me talking and being able to kind of contextualize my experience and let it out, without fear of her finding me too much. But the CBT, I don't think I know enough about it yet. So maybe you could tell us a bit more about it, and how you work with people, and some of the benefits of the treatment.
I feel like I need to do CBT justice now. Yeah, I guess maybe I'll kind of talk about what CBT is. So again, for those that don't know, CBT stands for cognitive behavioral therapy. And actually, it's probably one of the most researched types of therapy. I'm going to say in the UK, but probably worldwide actually, and will often be the first therapy offered for mental health difficulties. So as I mentioned before about IAP services, if you went to an IAP service, you're more likely to get CBT for whatever difficulty you come with. CBT,
is that free? Is that
so it's a free service. Yeah, so IAP is a free NHS service. Yeah.
But to the CBT therapy, is that free as well?
Yeah, yeah. All of the NHS. Yeah. So, but again, it's good to know because a lot of people don't know that. So, this is where kind of IAP services are really important, because actually this is where the government, the NHS are trying to utilize talking therapies through, for free, for people to be able to deal with any mental health concerns that they might have.
That's amazing. That really is amazing.
So with CBT, it is still a type of talking therapy, but with it, where I guess kind of the talking therapy you described, where you're kind of going there and kind of speaking to the therapist, and it feels like it's more you. I guess CBT differs in the sense where actually we're probably both responsible for changes. So in terms of the therapist, they bring their psychological knowledge, their experience working with clients, but we see the individual as an expert by experience, and they bring their lived experience to the table in order for therapy to work. It's about merging those factors together, really. And then within CBT, we're really going to be looking at your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors, the things that you do, the things that you don't do, which might be feeding into the difficulties that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fascinating. Because I thought, because I'll just say this now, because I don't want anyone else to maybe be in this thoughts as well, but I thought it was about exposure to your trauma, and that scared me, because I guess because I have such a body-mind reaction, it really scares me.
No, but you know what? So I guess when it comes to CBT, I guess it differs depending on what the person's coming with. So if we think about CBT for PTSD, there might be an element of exposure to it. And it might be easier for me to kind of go through a little kind of demonstration or an analogy that we often use to help people understand why we might be doing that within CBT. So imagine that your memory is a little bit like a linen cupboard, where you put away kind of all your sheets, etc. And when you're involved in a trauma, it's like someone kind of runs at you with a really huge duvet in their arms and is literally screaming at you, "Put this in the cupboard right now."
No.
Yeah. And then actually, what you do is that you take that duvet, you stuff it in, you push the door shut, and you walk away. But as soon as you do, the cupboard door opens and the duvet comes out.
Yes.
And then when it opens again, that same person screams again, "Put it away now." So every time you try to put it back in, it comes back out again, and in and out, in and out.
I feel like the duvet fell on me as well. When it came out after the door opened, it fell on top of me.
Yeah, and it probably would have, and we often compare that to, and we say that's what happens when you're involved in a traumatic event. Your traumatic event is like the duvet. It's too big to fit into how you normally remember things. So you might have to put it out of your mind because it's too upsetting, and that's where you're stuffing the duvet in. Actually, that doesn't always work, because the door opens again. The memory keeps coming back, and that might be in nightmares, that might be in flashbacks.
Yeah.
So if you need to fit the duvet into the cupboard, what do you need to do?
I need to either unpack some of my cupboard, or I need to deal with the duvet in a different way.
Amazing. That's literally the answer. So yeah, brilliant. So the solution actually is to take the duvet out, smooth it out, fold it up neatly, and then fit it back into the cupboard so it doesn't pop out. And
Yeah.
that solution is no different from how we would work with your memories in a traumatic event. So we need to talk through the memory from one end to the other to make sense of what happened, and then try to fit it into our normal way of remembering things.
Right.
Because actually you can't delete the memory, but we can help you have more control over it instead of the memory controlling you. So this is where kind of exposure, we don't really call it exposure, but I guess I can understand why you've named it that, but we might call it reliving, where actually we would get you in a safe environment to go through the process of what happened within that memory, because you need to process it in order to fold it neatly and put it away in the cupboard.
Yes.
And actually that can be really scary, which is why it requires a lot of trust from the therapist. And that should only be done when you feel comfortable and safe to do so.
Absolutely. I mean, like, I'm talking to you now, and you know, you're very relaxing, very understanding. You know, you're you know, because with PTSD we think a lot about vibration, because we vibrate a lot, you know. So the fact that you're like, you know, that means that I feel comfortable to be able to talk. Whereas the scenario with, like, you know, hey, tell me this, I just feel like
and that's not what therapy should look like. And I guess this is where everyone will have different ways that they kind of react to therapy. And it sounds like actually if you had somebody doing that, you're like, whoa, I can't do this. You need somebody calm, relaxed, that will probably make you feel calm and relaxed.
Exactly. And if my vibrations are high, I don't need to meet someone else who's vibrating, because we're not going to calm down. We're not going to, I don't like the word calm, but you know what I mean, find our balance. We're not going to kind of harmonize if we're both playing off each other, you know. Well, I think that's fascinating, and I'm actually I really want to look more into it, because a lot of people with PTSD say CBT has been really effective for them, as well as EMDR, but particularly CBT. So, thank you so much for telling us a bit more about that. So I have another question for you coming in fast. So, love of your work. Okay, so I remember you told me that you loved your work, which really touched me, because with the mental illness, it's really tough to manage, you know, not just for us, but people around us. And so when I hear that you love your work, it's so encouraging to someone with a diagnosis. Your level of care and connection, it changes lives. So please, could you tell us about your time working with patients with conditions such as psychosis? So we don't need to, you know, obviously their personal information, you know, nothing like that, but you know, we just thinking about, you know, the relationship, and I know this was a particular area that was so special to you. So I'd love to hear just a little bit more.
As you mentioned, I love my work. I love talking to people, making sense of people's meanings and narratives, and actually just providing support in any way that I can. So with psychosis, my first role within the NHS was as a support worker on an inpatient psychosis ward. For those that don't know what that is, psychosis is when, I guess, people have a different reality to the general norm. So people may have hallucinations and really strong paranoid beliefs, and I guess some of those beliefs that they have and the hallucinations that they have, I guess it's just, people aren't used to that. But actually, because of that, they're quite a marginalized group, surrounded with a lot of stigma. So when people hear the word psychosis, they think of danger, they think of dangerous people, violent people. And I think that's something that connected with me more so, because actually that isn't different from what people tend to think when they think of Black men, actually.
Really?
Maybe that's kind of why I have a special connection or interest in that area, actually, because they are a marginalized group. And I've said for a long time that when I've kind of finished this doctorate, I would love to return back to the field of psychosis, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done within that field.
So important.
I would love to contribute to it.
You know, I've got an interesting one for you. I don't know, this is a story. I don't know how it's going to come out. I hope it doesn't sound like, you know, like I'm not criticizing. Right, okay, so I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm not criticizing the person, and I'm not criticizing myself, because I'll tell you why at the end. But okay, so I have hypersensitivity, and people coming by me, it's like a rush.
Of course.
It's like, oof, like a train, you know, when a tube goes past or a train really fast on the platform, that's what it's like for me. So when I'm in a commuter, obviously I don't do that now, but when I remember 2 years ago, I was working with a nutritionist, and we were doing like a series of talks, you know, in venues, talking about fitness and nutrition and mental health. And I was going to meet her to go to a meeting. And so I lean against the wall. So when I'll go close to the wall, so I've only got people going that way. So I was walking along this wall, kind of crawling along it, and I tap my face. It's a comfort thing, I think, when you touch your face a lot. So I'll tap my face, because otherwise I'll be ticking everywhere. So I'm holding onto this wall, walking along, and a man came out of the tube station, and he looked straight at me, walked right up to me, and literally got close, and I went like that, as you've probably seen me doing on camera a few times tonight. So, and this was the reaction, okay? So I went like that, and he turned around. Now he was about 6'2", 6'3", because I had someone else I knew who was that height. I was very used to looking up, right? So he was a lot bigger than me, and he turned around and went, "You're mental, you're mental." And I was like, "Huh?" And he went, "Yeah, you should be on medication." Now, what happens to me when someone does that is I go into rage. So all of that hypersensitivity all goes, and I'm like, "Wow," kind of thing. So I shouted at him, "I'm on medication. I have a therapist, I have a doctor." And we had this back and forth where he was shouting about me being mental, and I'm shouting out, "No, I'm medicated, you know, yeah, I am mental. No, you shouldn't be saying that to me. But yeah, I've got mental illness and I'm aware of it and I am medicated." I was just minding my own business. Now, what I say to you is this: the gentleman, he was black, I was white. Now, what worried me was when that happened, because that story to me is, so if I tell that story, I don't tell you he was black and I was white. I tell you I had an interaction, and it was mental health that worried me, the interaction. But I wonder whether me jumping triggered him because of that attitude towards black men sometimes. So he thought I jumped because I was like, you know, and really I have hypersensitivity, and he didn't know that. And I wonder if that's what's really going on.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's really
It's
interesting.
just our traumas that kind of bash against each other.
And I think that's a really good way of putting it, actually. I think sometimes we forget how complex human beings are, and whenever we come into contact with another human being, we're bringing all our complexities, our experiences. So actually what you've said could have well been the case, actually.
I feel
because
that.
undoubtedly that individual will come with their own complexities, their own traumas, and then actually it's almost like, as you mentioned, those traumas are clashing with one another.
Absolutely. And so I didn't feel like, you know, I was just upset that he was shouting about my medication in the street. But I just thought, why would he do that? Why would he get so upset? And I know for a fact that I shudder. And I think that was a trigger for him. I really do. And so I look at that situation, you know, quite differently, because if it happened prior to trauma, I'd have been like, "Oh, don't shout at me." But no, because of trauma, I'm like, I can see that situation a bit different.
But it's good that you've got an awareness and a different alternative way of seeing things, because actually some people will just be thinking, what the hell is this guy doing? But I guess from your position, you've been able to kind of acknowledge where you're coming from, but also attempt to see what might be going on for the other person. And as human beings, we don't tend to do that. We tend to be kind of just thinking about what's going on for us, and rarely thinking about what might be going on for the other person that we're in contact.
Well, it's really interesting with you as a psychologist, actually, because, you know, when you go into therapies, what happens is you have to give the person the space to be themselves, and you also recognize that there's things that's driving them all through all different areas of their life. So you can't give one person that space and then they say, no, someone else is an absolute write-off. You know what I mean? You kind of have to give everyone that space and acknowledge that where they're coming from. So, you know, when you get into psychology, when you get into therapies, when you have trauma, you know, it's very hard for you to then go and say, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't act like that. Because you're like, no, I get it. You're not doing it. It might not be anything to do with me. It could be completely what happened to you 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so I love that. I find that fascinating, that we can really help each other, because we do kind of do our best to have that open kind of, you know, way with people. So, okay, I said the questions would be thick and fast.
Having a good chat.
I know, I love it though, I love it. Okay, so how do you relax? We need to think about that. So you have like such a demanding job. It's so important to look after your mental and physical health. So how do you relax or power down after a long day at work?
I think I've got lots of different strategies I try to use to relax and power down after a long day full of stress. What I usually find is my go-to is actually the PlayStation. I usually find when I've kind of finished work, come home, switch on the PlayStation, play some games. And actually, there's a lot of research about how playing video games is really good for the brain and actually really good for your mood. And I think I'm I'm testament to that. I think it really does help to relieve my stress. Before this, we were speaking about kind of physical activity. So the gym definitely plays a big part for me. Actively going, as I mentioned, 4 to 5 times a week. And actually, I think that's good for different reasons, because actually it's not only kind of working my body out physically, but it's just a nice way to just detach myself from what is going on mentally, as well as being actually quite a nice community. So you kind of see the same faces when you go, have little chats with people at small talk. But actually, it's quite nice at times. And then obviously Netflix, binging, as most people do. But actually, again, I think that's really helpful to help me just detach from the day. So just kind of absorbing myself into whatever show that I like. So at the moment, I'm binging a show called Arrow, which came out years upon years ago, but I never watched it. But it's a kind of a DC like superhero kind of show. Yeah, really enjoying it.
Oh, awesome. I'm terrible. I watch like things like I was watching Seaspiracy the other night.
Oh no, yeah. Somebody's told me to watch that actually. Yeah.
Okay, well, if you, I absolutely recommend it. I think it's super informative. What I would say is it's like, oh, does that really go on kind of thing. It's not a chill out. It's not a chill out. Like the next day someone offered me fish fingers and I was like, oh, I don't know. I really don't know.
No, I'll be thinking, am I trying to get even more stressed after a stressful day?
Do you know the funny thing, right? When I worked in the arts, and I still do, but it's independent now, but when I actually worked in the museum, I spent the whole day talking about the ephemeral feelings or the visceral reactions to artworks and blah, blah, blah. Then I'd come home and I'd watch things like, I can't even think of anything off the top of my head now, just comedy, but like, you know, things that are just like, you know, a makeover on someone's house or a makeover on their outfit, or basically makeovers, dating shows chill me out because I'm like, I
can relate to comedies though, things make me laugh. So I always used to I feel like watching Friends was always a big go-to for me because I just always laugh watching Friends.
I was talking about Friends the other night actually in one of my videos because I was doing about sea life. I'm doing rando nature at the moment, so I was doing about seahorses. And then I started talking about jellyfish and how I held one and I didn't get stung.
That episode in Friends with the jellyfish.
Yes, oh my gosh, exactly. Okay, so I said it was Rachel and Monica. It was Monica who got stung, right?
Yeah.
Who was the one that had to like deliver her the medication?
It was Chandler. Yeah, he had to. Yeah.
No, I thought it was Chandler, and then I said Rachel.
Yeah. Because it was meant to be Joey originally, but he bottled it and then Chandler did it.
Okay. So this is the kind of things that we get up to when we're not doing clinical psychology and, you know, contemporary art.
Yeah.
I love it.
We are human beings after all.
Exactly. No, so yeah, guys, absolutely. TV can be great. And also you said computer games. So, you know, they can be really relaxing because it's like escapism. It really takes you inside, you know, doesn't it, to their world.
Definitely.
It's a bit like fitness. So fitness and computer games are the same because if you want to keep, in my case, it's Nintendo, it's Luigi. If you want to keep Luigi getting through the levels, you have to focus on him staying alive.
Yeah, you have to concentrate. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
And if you want
And
to
then
do
your hand-eye coordination, all of that going on. Yeah,
yeah,
there's a lot going into it. Yeah.
it's exactly the same in fitness as well, but you're keeping yourself moving. So, whereas obviously the computer game's a bit more mental, but these are things where you can take your mind out into another place, and it's just so helpful. So yeah, big supporter of all the things you do to relax, because they're the same with me. Okay, so support for psychologists, I think this one's really important. So as well, so it's such a noble profession in my eyes, psychology. So giving the gift of space and empathy to another person while they work through their trauma, it's a gift. There must be, in certain cases, some transference of that trauma onto you, especially with a patient you might feel an affinity with, for example, a young person, and you can see their whole future ahead of them, and so you really want to help them. This must really affect you. How do you manage this and find your own support, and your colleagues? How do you protect yourselves from mental stresses?
Yeah. I think it's a really good question. And it's actually a question that we often don't get asked. And it's funny that we don't get asked. I think sometimes people forget that we're also human beings like everyone else. And people often assume that we're kind of just a sponge that just absorbs people's pain and all of their kind of difficulties and their traumas. And that probably is true. We are a sponge, but actually there's an acknowledgement that this stuff does affect us. We come with our own experiences of trauma, and that would have kind of impacted our assumptions and biases that we might have. Things like transference is common within trauma work, because it's very emotive. And again, for those that don't know what transference is, that's when an individual kind of redirects their emotion, their feeling, to the other person in the room, which is usually the therapist. And as a therapist, I can be in a room kind of hearing this really explicit kind of information and going through that memory with the individual. And I can be sitting there with what we call vicarious trauma, that trauma that's being transferred from the individual to me. And that's really, really hard, actually. It's really hard when you're almost entering that individual's world to see and feel the pain that they went through, see the things that they saw that were really traumatic. And for me, that's where supervision is really helpful, having spaces to reflect on the impact of these conversations that you have with clients, with another professional, with another colleague, and trying to think about why things bother you so much. So I remember kind of doing trauma work with a client, and he spoke about an incident where his brother was kind of attacked, and actually hit around the head, and kind of I identified with that because I actually at some point was attacked and hit around the head. And for me, that just brought up a lot of memories in my head about my past experiences. So this is where vicarious trauma is really important, because it can trigger off your own traumas. Because as therapists, we're not exempt from that. We have our own traumas because we're human beings. And for me, that's where kind of us having therapy can also be really helpful.
Yeah, it's so true. You guys have, your own lives and your own things going on, and it's very hard not to have that connection, that pathway once someone, because that's what they say as well. So I can say, putting out a lot about PTSD, there's certain environments where you have to do a lot of like trigger warning, thinking about other people. Someone with PTSD, now I'm not coming from, so I'm talking about someone living with it. It's kind of unusual to me, because you cannot trigger warning someone with PTSD very well, you know what I mean? Because then you'd have to monitor all the television that comes on everywhere I go, everything that people does around me. It's just, so it's kind of an interesting concept, the trigger warning to me, but I understand it because, people go through such deep emotional things. And so, there is that kind of trying to respect and say to people, this is what's coming up, you may want to step away. And like, for you, you're literally, in contact with people, you're taking everything that comes out of our head, how we explain it, how we relive it. So when I'm in therapy, I act everything out. I can't help it. I literally, when I'm in therapy, I go into the experience.
Yeah, and that's what happens.
Yeah. I'm not recalling a story for you. I'm literally like this, and then I that, and then
and that's why we call it reliving, because you are literally reliving the
Mm.
experience and the trauma that you went through.
Yeah, so for you guys, actually having to take that on and watch someone go through that is so draining, and also, yeah, it's triggering as well to, to your personal life. So I mean, so the support you guys have, like, do you have it internally, where you work, or do you go outside, or do you have a
Mm,
combination of what you
yeah.
look
So
for?
supervision would be internally. When it comes to us seeking therapy ourselves, that's externally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, well, you have
Yeah.
to be private about therapy, don't you?
Yeah.
My
Well,
therapist
I
is
mean,
anyone I know.
so I guess the annoying thing about my role now is that I guess we don't kind of get provided therapy from our own um kind of workplaces. We have to seek that ourselves externally.
I see, yeah. But you need that, you need to, with therapy, you need to go somewhere else, don't you? So you can
Yeah,
just
yeah, exactly. And
be,
I think I guess that's where I guess that's where we become clients ourselves. So we're kind of having
yeah,
to look around for a therapist that we can identify with, somebody that actually we feel safe with and comfortable with.
yeah. Oh, that's amazing. That, you guys look for support for yourselves, and you don't just, focus on the, people who need you, because that's a big thing that people do. We throw all our energy into our work and everything else, and then we realize that we've, it's all kind of a bit much. So no, I'm glad you're aware of those things as well. So let's turn to your article now. I love your article. This is what made me think I have to speak to you. A big writer myself, so this is a great way to reach people. So I read your fascinating article about exposure to trauma and PTSD amongst young Black men. So please, can you tell me a bit more about some of the issues that young Black men face, and what advice you'd
Interesting.
extend to men listening, to this, listening to us speaking? What should they kind of think about doing for themselves?
Hmm.
It's a bit of a big, where do I start?
Well, thank you for reading the article, saying it's fascinating.
I loved it. I
um,
loved it.
but yeah, I kind of wrote the article because I listened to and love a lot of UK rap music. Actually, it connects me with.
Sorry. Let's say, can you give us the title of your article so people can go and look at
All
it?
right, yeah. So it's called "The Hidden Life of a Top Boy." Um, so I guess even thinking about the name, not too long ago there was kind of a UK drama called Top Boy, which kind of it really looked into I guess some aspects of young Black culture really. And I guess why I named my article "The Hidden Life of a Top Boy" is that often behind some of the things that are going on at face value, hidden things like trauma are going on in the background. Um, and I guess when it comes to music and UK rap music, it really connects with me because I hear and feel the pain in the lyrics and understand the everyday realities that people go through. And when I'm listening to it, I kind of really get absorbed by the stories actually, because actually they relate to my life in some way or another, and that might be directly or indirectly. Um, and I just really enjoy expressing myself through writing, and I think that's what made the article really raw, really different, because actually it felt a bit genuine, really. It wasn't me coming from outside, kind of looking in. It was me being part of that which goes on. And actually making an acknowledgement that there's a lot of trauma within us, as I mentioned, something I've been privy to. I've kind of experienced that through other young men, police, um, and I don't often feel that actually therapy kind of at the moment is really in line and for young Black men actually, or young people in general really. So I guess advice that I would give, um, an interesting one. Hold your head up. Dealing with trauma alone is not easy, especially with stigma, and especially when you add toxic masculinity into the mix.
Yes,
So as
yes.
men, we have that kind of perception, and I guess society's forced it upon us that we need to kind of man up, kind of just deal with things by ourselves. And actually, that isn't the case.
No.
And if you ever want to discuss these things with another man, I facilitate private sessions. You might see this and think, you know what, I like what Ron is saying, or I like his character. Contact him. And I often tell people, think about your coping strategies. think about how helpful and useful they are, but also think about the impact of them on yourself and your loved ones and those around you.
Well, you know what, and I really encourage that actually. Do reach out to people that you really enjoy speakers. And I think that, Ron, what is the best way to contact you? What's your preferred?
Yeah. So I mean, I kind of say my email address here. I don't know if you want to kind of post it in the. What's the
I mean,
user?
it's really up to you. I say my emails because I mean it's on my website, it's out there anyway, and I wouldn't want anyone to not be able to get hold of me. So I don't mind saying mine out. It's up to you. But I know you've got Twitter and LinkedIn as well. So just tell us what.
Oh yes, I'm active all over the place. Yeah, so
Yeah,
it might be.
contactable.
My Twitter is at ndodzro, the N for November, Dodzro, Dodzro. My LinkedIn is my name, Ronald Dodzro. So yeah, probably they would be the best ports of call. Yeah, if you're interested.
And I totally recommend reaching out because I reached out to Ron and he was lovely. And
Thank you.
He listened to what I had to say about PTSD, and I told him what really sparked my interest in his article. And funny enough, he may have been writing it for the boys, you know, but actually I totally
identified with it. Yeah, good. Yeah.
I know that sounds funny, but we're going to talk about that actually. I'll tell you about that. But you know, and I love the way you brought together the theory and the lyrics, you know, because I think that's really important because, you know, you've got theory, you've got psychology, you know, and that's fantastic. But to have someone who has experience rapping, bringing it into music, bringing it into art, bringing it into the community, you know, that is amazing. And I think Stormzy, who you quote quite a lot actually, he has been really integral to being able to reach different audiences because a lot of the music that I experienced when I was younger, the rap music, the commercial stuff, I'm not talking about the gritty stuff where it was really like, which I actually really liked. The commercial stuff was very much, it was a little bit about women, you know, and it's about all of us, but you know, I mean, Snoop Dogg had an album cover with a woman in a doghouse, you know, and while I love the music and I still listen to it, I cannot look at the album cover. I'm like,
very misogynistic.
Whereas Stormzy, I'm like, I get what you're saying about trauma. He even says about the power of women. He's like, he says, he's got a song with Little Mix and he says, I'm here to complement your vibe. You know, it's not about me being in charge or you being in charge, as woman's the leader or it's just I'm complimenting your vibe, you're complimenting my vibe. Do you know what I mean? And that is so then I'm all over, you know, like his music because it means more than just like, you know, to dance or to whatever it is.
Exactly.
So you know, your article is, you know, it just combines that and I just love that. So okay, so I would just like to say as well, there's a common belief that women talk and we don't stop talking. But what I would like to say to the women out there is it really depends on, you know, I feel like when we're in our desperate moments, we don't tell people. We actually, you know, we may have a support network to an extent, you know, so we've got people to talk to. But would you go into work? Would you go and see your friends and say, hey, my life just is falling apart? No, not really, especially when they're all saying, oh, I'm going out tonight. Oh, I've got fancy this and that. You don't want to be the one going, I'm depressed. You know what I mean? So actually, the support network outside has been really useful. And as a woman, you know, I could actually tell people quite a lot of stuff, but they don't want to hear it anyway. And I get that. They don't want to hear me going all the time. Whereas when I'm with my therapist, I go past, I go into this is what's really going on. You know what I mean? So women, same, men, women, from every background, you need someone to talk to, like seriously, someone you can open up to. So, okay, so let's talk a bit about cultural context. So please, can you tell me a little bit more about the importance of cultural context when a man reaches out for support? So you mentioned, you know, there's certain things that Black men in society might encounter, you know, which might be related to, like, you know, something that's more understandable, you know, say for instance, if they came to you, than if, you know, so we all have our different things where we connect, but, you know, culturally, and it can be also the country you're from as well, there's an understanding about the way people do things, how they talk to each other, body language, you know, all the different complications that come. And so okay, so I've just chatted away. What was the question? Oh yeah, so can you talk about some of the cultural context when a man reaches out for support, you know, some of the things that might hold him back and some of the things that, you know, we could.
So I guess I've already kind of spoken a little bit about toxic masculinity. I think it's hard for men across the board in general, regardless of your background, because of these kind of messages instilled in us from childhood, actually, and how we kind of grow up within that mentality. I guess for Black men in particular, and I kind of talk about men in general after that, with Black men, I think why they struggle to access services is that often there aren't people that look like them within services. So actually, when I think about my role as a clinical psychologist in training and as a Black man, I could probably count on one hand how many I know that are in the profession. And actually, if we're asking young Black men to access services, that actually they don't feel like they can relate to anybody who's working in the services, then actually that is a big barrier. And I guess on the tangent, when you kind of asked about cultural context, I always find that quite interesting, because my response might sound weird, but because I'm a fan of language, I often see a culture as a group of people who have similar ideas, similar customs, similar behaviors. And actually, a lot of things then tend to fall into this idea of culture. So I might be thinking about kind of ethnic culture. That might be what it means to be an ethnic minority, reaching out for support as a man. I might also be thinking about what it means for a white man asking for support, and breaking that down further, because context is important. So an English man might have a different perception and idea of seeking support compared to a Welsh or Scottish man.
Yeah.
Because they're actually the ways that we're brought up. I might be thinking about class. And actually, a working class man will have a different perception of seeking help to a middle class man.
Absolutely.
The age of the man might make a difference.
Yes, age is a big one. Yeah.
So I think it's really important to acknowledge all of these things and take them into consideration when we're thinking about how we can help men overall reach out for support. Because men aren't just men. We have our context in which our manhood has been developed and continues to be maintained in. So I can acknowledge my manhood is related to my Black identity, but it's also related to my British identity, the fact that I was born in South London and that being an identity. And these are all factors that have shaped
absolutely.
how I see myself as a man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a North Londoner, so
yeah.
there we go. I used to work in South London, I loved it. But yeah, no, I absolutely see what you mean. And, you know, it is nice sometimes to see, you know, I mean, for me, what I needed with therapy was probably an older woman, you know, because I've been stuck in this kind of childlike state with the trauma, because I've had trauma twice, you see. So the childhood one means that I flip between two ages. And I didn't realise that, but I do realise it more and more, especially when I see myself on camera. And I'm okay with that. There's nothing I can do about it specifically. It is what it is. But so for me, it was quite useful to have an older woman. For me, it wouldn't have mattered kind of her background as to whether she was, you know, I didn't have many. For me, I'm just like this individual on my own, like everything's gone. You know what I mean? I just need
It's
to
a good point, because I think everyone has what they think they need and what they think will be helpful. So in that instance where you said that actually you felt you needed an older woman, and I guess that's the thing about the profession, that hopefully we get to a point where what people are wanting to seek is there. Because actually, I wonder how you would feel if actually you didn't have access to an older woman. How would that have made you feel?
She was treating that child side of me, you know what I mean? And that's really interesting, because I didn't know it. I didn't really know I didn't know I was flipping between two. I thought I was just consistently a little bit, but then I felt like really older than my years. And at the same time, sometimes I behave with this energy of a child, and I'm like, oh, I guess it's just me. And so it wasn't when I first met her that I was like, this is what I need, but it was like, I mean, I think, you know, that it can be the case that, you know, but I wasn't so sure at the time. But it's been amazing because it's kind of helped me to go into that childhood and allow her to kind of say, no, it's okay. Oh no, you know, and go back on some of those memories and be like, I care about you, kind of thing. It's not like my family didn't. It was something that was outside, you know. Anyway, delving through.
This is what happens. We have great chats.
It's got to run, I'm telling you guys. My life story. Oh my gosh. Anyways, no, that's really great what you said about, you know, so I think, and I think men, guys, you need to also think, what do I need? Let's try and step past these expectations of me. I know I need to talk to someone. Okay. And then when you search, you'll find people like Ron, you'll find people like me, people like all of us who are like, come on, we'll help you. Let's do something. Let's do fitness. Let's do psychology. You know, let's do forms of therapy. Let's help you. You know, so don't feel like anyone around you who's saying, oh no. Don't feel like they're the only voices in the world, because they're not. Okay, they may be doing the best for you within their what they think is good, but they're not the only one. So you can reach out and find some other people as well.
Brilliant.
Okay. Okay, so trauma and music. Okay, so as we were talking about your article, you know, it's infused with the lyrics. And I love the way you move between theory and lyrics in your article. So music is so important from a communication and a self-expression. It's so important with communication and self-expression with trauma. So it's really interesting to really look at some of the music you've quoted and listen to it again with the trauma as part of the context. I almost feel like rap music can be misunderstood today. Just as you say in your article about, you know, a young man with his hoodie up, you know, he's not necessarily angry or, you know, looking for any trouble. If anything, he wants privacy. And that's exactly how you know, so please could you tell us about how music has influenced your life and your writing, you know, and it's been a comfort for you and it's been, you know, inspiring.
I think music always touches me, because I think actually it's always been an escape for me. So as a young man, I used to rap, used to make music. Gave me a sense of community, was a way for me to express myself actually. And I probably listen, I can probably say I listen to music every day without fail. It calms me down, gets me to think about life. And that might be when I'm at the gym, when I'm on the way to work. I have to be listening to music. I'm literally that guy in his car singing and rapping while he's driving. I am that person. And I guess in terms of my writing, I see music the same way that I see articles and journals and publications. It's just another format for people to be sharing their knowledge. And this is kind of where I want to eventually be able to see my favorite artists becoming role models. He mentioned Stormzy before, and him being a role model. And I think more people within kind of the UK rap scene need to become role models to help with the barriers in terms of engaging with services. So I would love for there to be I don't know, targeted campaigns enlisting the help of these role models to help raise awareness about trauma. Because actually, I think when it comes to trauma within the mental health spectrum, it isn't often discussed within kind of certain communities. And I think it's really important that
Yeah, absolutely. And like and you know, that is really important. So someone, you know, some of the rap artists are so influential. There's so many young people who are like, I want to look like that. That's where some of us come along in our 20s and we've got our certificate from uni and we're like, right, I'm gonna have a mansion now and I'm gonna be like, oh no, actually that was the rap artist, it's not everyone. So it is really important when they do actually get into the real stuff and they're like, look kids, you know, not everyone is going to be like me, a rap artist with this kind of reach, but you know what, you do have, you know, emotions and experiences that I have as well, and I really want to tell you how you can look after yourself. And I think he really does a great job You know, I do it because when he first did that song about, you know, when he was with Little Mix and he's like, okay, women, let me tell you. I was like, no, you're not telling me anything. But then when I listened to it again and he's like, no, we need to compliment each other. I was like, no, actually, okay. So, you know, it's always good to listen to things a couple of times.
Yeah, and I agree with that definitely. And I think and what I found really interesting is that when people listened to this, they were basically listening to the lyrics and the songs in which the lyrics were from. They couldn't believe that they had been listening to these songs all this time and weren't taking that in. Which again, related to the point you just said, I think it's really important that we listen to songs over again, because there's always messages that we just fly over because actually they don't relate to us. But when you really listen to them again, oh wow, I didn't realize he was saying it like this, or she was saying it like that.
Yeah. Oh my God, Stormzy's going to get so many people with PTSD contacting him now. Oh my God, tell me what to do. But no, that's really inspiring, and also music's really important to people with PTSD because, you know, I mean, certainly myself with the hypersensitivity, one way to cope with hypersensitivity, to be able to leave the house, is to put music in. So, because when I go outside, I hear all the layers of sound. Okay, so I hear the water in the pipes under the road. I hear the leaves, I hear everything, you know. And I know people are like, no, so do I, but there is a level of blocking stuff out that you do. You know, you don't process every little detail in life. What you do is get kind of a context of a lot of stuff, you know. Otherwise I wouldn't be able to move because I'd be so fascinated in like this one thing. Like if I was looking at my hand, I mean, looking at all the different light, I mean, I could be here for ages. So, you know, there is an element of, you know, kind of taking a quick look at things. When you have PTSD and you enter hypersensitivity, it is literally like looking at everything in detail. You could be here for ages. So when I put the music on, it cuts out a whole layer of sound. It also makes my heart rate change. So I'm kind of feeling lively. And so I'm less sensitive to touch. I mean, if someone touched me or came up behind me, it wouldn't be a good thing. But what I'm saying is I'm not thinking about it. I'm more like kind of in the mode. And so music actually is really important for that as well. Just kind of, you know, it does kind of change your psychology a bit, you know. So yeah, that combination, the depth, and also, you know, what it can do for you. So me myself, I'm really big into beats, so I'm house. I put on a little bit of old school garage sometimes. I'll put on like dance music, whatever it is, and it's like some of it I wouldn't have normally listened to. But when you start doing like a routine to it, or you start dancing to it or whatever, it's like totally different. It transforms your body and your mind. So, okay, she obviously enjoys fitness. So relating to your article, now this really, I find this quite fascinating. I want to know about this. Okay, so I related to your article, and I've mentioned in particular it's because you're talking about the men with their hoods up, you don't know what they're thinking. I'm the woman with my hood up. I hear you don't know what I'm thinking. And sometimes when people come up to me and I get shocked, and then they get shocked by that, and then I'm like, go away, and they're like, oh, what's going on? You know, so when I totally relate to that, when someone's like, oh, I've been stereotyped for the way I look, or I've been stigmatized for it. You know, when you have a mental illness, the stigma, it becomes very real for you. You know, it really does. So so that's how I kind of was like, yeah, I get this. I have an into what you're talking about here, definitely. So okay, so what did should I just read what I wrote down? I was going to literally sign on. I agree, you don't know what's going on for the person under the hoodie. There I am with my baseball cap on, my sunglasses, my hood up, wanting to be left alone, to have privacy from others. That's a lot of people with PTSD. You no longer fit the expectations of others as you battle your triggers. That can really take people by surprise. So stereotypes and stigma must be challenged, and I totally relate to you on that. So I want to know, lots of people have related to you through your writing. Can you tell us a bit about your experience? Does it, you know, writing and putting it out there, you know, have you been surprised with who's reached out? Have you had some really, you know, conversations you didn't expect?
Yeah, so I have been quite surprised actually, and interestingly, so when I first published it within kind of the magazine's called The Psychologist, and that's a really big magazine within the psychology world. And actually, it was amazing because not only was it received really well within the psychology community, I had people outside of the profession contacted me. And so, yeah, various things. I've had charities contact me, council people contact me for kind of wanting to have discussions about things in terms of how society can help bridge that gap between traumas that young people are experiencing. I guess there's two kind of people that really kind of hit me hard actually when they contacted me. So one was a young woman that told me how it had changed her perception of Black men and had to allow her to think about things differently, because actually, of course, when you see a young Black man, when you see that walking towards you, whether you like it or not, there will be an unconscious reaction in you that actually will almost be screaming alarm bells. And actually, me kind of reframing this and getting people to think about other reasons why these things might be going on. The same with like cannabis, where some people might be seeing a young Black man smoking cannabis and go, oh, here we go again. But actually, a lot of people do that to calm the symptomology down.
I've just put out a video about it.
So again, it's about reframing and trying to understand where these different kind of behaviors and things are coming from. And the second one I think hit me the hardest was when I had a young Black man message me on Twitter, and he was speaking to me about the trauma that he's experienced and how it stayed with him all these years. So he was mentioning that he's kind of sees himself as a big man now, he's got kids, he's married, and actually it still affects him. He's always on edge, constantly alert in his surroundings, and actually reading my article, he felt that it was an acknowledgement and a validation of his experiences. And that actually filled me with a lot of pride, because I wanted it to reach out to the people that like him, who resonated with it. So it was nice to know that it reached out to the people I intended it to.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, and he needed to see something.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of us do actually, that validation, because so, you know, with undiagnosed PTSD, for example, and you've got hypersensitivity, but you don't know why, you get all these labels. Oh, you're an empath. Oh, you're very awkward. Oh, you're an overthinker. You're this, you're that. And actually, when someone first turns around and said, you've been through this thing, this is why you're reacting like that, it is validating. It's like, oh, I'm not just weird and difficult. You know, there's things that are going on, there's reasons why. And that is so fascinating, because that now could be the start of his journey to, you know, resolving some of that trauma for himself. And I think, you know, what's quite interesting, because he said he had children. You know, once you get into the stages where you may become a parent, or you are a parent, if you, especially with childhood trauma, you then start looking back at some of the things that may have happened to you, and you're like, if that happened to my child, whoa, you better run so fast, because mate, I will not stop. Okay. You know, so it's kind of like that. And then you're like, hang on a minute, I'm reacting like that because that happened to me. Well, hang on a minute, that's not right. And then you realize, well, all this kind of stuff has been going on for you, or, you know. That is so fascinating. So you've got ladies reaching out, you've got men, you've got people from the Black community, you've got people from everywhere else, you know. So you're actually your rising far reaches anything that you could have anticipated.
Yeah, that was really nice to hear. Yeah, it's really nice that was the case. And I guess it's motivated me to write more.
Oh, please do. Yeah, I'm waiting for your next article. No, it's true though, because it literally connected me to you to the point that I was like, I need to write to you. I didn't just read it and go, that's interesting, let's keep going.
Yeah.
No, I need to speak to you about this. And I'm so glad I did, because, you know, as I said, you're not just, you know, I think it's really great to have, you know, this talk for men, and also you're really great for supporting women as well, by the things that you do, and your understanding and your professional knowledge and your personal, you know, what you bring to it as a person, you know. So I just, you know, I think that's absolutely amazing. So do keep writing, because then people will keep contacting you. You know, so yes. Okay. So here's my final question. And actually, we've just been speaking for an hour and I can't believe it. I absolutely love talking. What message do you have for any men listening tonight about reaching out for support and talking about their trauma? So what I mean is, you know, if they're still sitting here after everything we've said and going, I don't know, you know, how could this really change things for them? How could this, you know,
I think it's kind of reiterating what I already mentioned about holding your head up high, chest up, and even if it's not about trauma and it's just kind of mental health in general, just know that you're not alone, and you don't need to deal with it alone. And as I mentioned, toxic masculinity, I guess for me, is one of the biggest reasons actually why men don't contact services, why they don't reach out. And just know that there are spaces solely for men to have these discussions about toxic masculinity, about mental health. And even if you don't want that to be a formal process, do it with your friends. So I've kind of recently, me and my friends, we've probably known each other for about a good, I want to say a good 17, 18 years.
wow.
Really kind of, yeah, long-term friends. But actually, it's only recently where we've started to open up to one another and have discussions about our mental health. And we've kind of created a whole club called the Men of Integrity.
The men of integrity.
Yeah, so we've
Oh,
kind of
that's
created
nice.
a little space where
I love
kind of at
that.
least like once a month we just have these awkward, difficult discussions that we're not used to having. But actually, we understand the importance of having them, because actually we know that if we bottle all of this up, at some point it just comes out, and the way that it comes out, we're not always happy with. Um,
That's it. Yeah, and then you feel
yeah,
bad about how it came out.
exactly, and then that can lead to
Maybe
guilt,
hate yourself for
frustration,
it.
anger. Exactly. So I think there's a lot of value in talking to other men about these things, and this is kind of where I said I'm here. If people feel like actually they've resonated with anything I've said, contact me as another man if you feel like actually that would be helpful. And I mentioned kind of the IAP services. Know that these services exist. Every borough in London will have one. Contact them if you feel comfortable to. And just know that there are people out there, organizations out there that want the best for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it comes from the heart. So, you know, people who work in these areas, they're really dedicating their life to support other people. You know, you don't just do these things because, you know, it's more than a job, you know, because it's so much that you take on. And there's so much, and you know what, it's like what you're doing as well is trying to support people so they can support themselves as a member of society, you know what I mean? And that's really important, that people are rehabilitated. You don't want to keep people away from things if that's not what they need. So if you can help people to rehabilitate and have some form of their own control and management of what's going on, which I assure you guys with PTSD, it comes over time, it comes through building, you know. So at the beginning I was just like, I don't know what's going on, and like now, you know, I know what I need, what I don't need, what, you know, and you know, that will come with time. And I just think, yeah, you know, I think also what you said about the fact that you meet the guys monthly and you have a name, that's really lovely, because it's a dedication to it. It's like it's important to you, right? Also, it's a routine and it's regular. So it's only once a month. Well, probably not strictly, but whatever. But you've got that one time where you're like, look, guys, we're going to talk. We're meeting each other. This is our time.
Whether we like it or not, we've got
to
to.
Like, you know, don't tell me you're going on a date or you're going out to wash your hair, wash your hair tonight. You're coming to the
literally, because I think we're very aware that it's taken us so long as men to be able to feel comfortable about having these discussions, and that might be about our kind of relationships with our partners, about kind of just things going on in our lives that have really impacted us. But I guess I think it's really important that as men we start putting ourselves in these situations to just get over that awkwardness that comes with the toxic masculinity, the thinking, I can steal this myself. But sometimes we can't. And we just have to be honest about that.
And we have to think about what we're doing really informs the younger generation. So when children look at us, women and men, little boys and little girls look at us, you know, they're going to copy what we do. they're going to take on the stresses and the worries that we
exactly.
do. So please, we want to challenge stigma and say that our children of today, you know, and to our future children can grow up and not have this toxic masculinity flying around, or what a woman should be, or any of this kind of stuff, or you've got a mental illness. Shh. No, not shush. Anyway, well, I have to say thank you so much. We've gone past our hour. But you know what? It's such a fascinating discussion with you. And yeah, I'm just so glad that you could join me this evening. And I can tell you now, so guys, we've recorded this. It's going out online. So that means that you can share the link. So if anyone wants to come and see the talk, they can come and see, and you know, they can always get in touch with us if they would like to talk further. And so we thought it would be really important to have this resource online, absolutely free for other people. So I'm really grateful, Ron, that you have you know, joined me this evening. And yeah, so I think we've been fairly comprehensive. I don't have any questions, I haven't had any questions come in. So I think, you know, sometimes when we actually chat and people just listen to us chat, just so much actually comes out naturally.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. All right, well, I'd like to say thank you so much. And yeah, please guys, do look at Ron's article. It's fantastic. And yeah, I hope we'll be, you know, doing some projects in the future. So
Brilliant. Yeah.
all right, well, thank